Welcome back to another edition of Post Media's Ottawa-Senators panel. I'm Ken Warren with Bruce Garriock, and special guest this week, Sportsnet's Kyle Bukauskas. Thanks for coming in, Kyle.
Oh, thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about, as always. It was a busy week for the Senators. I think top of mind for a lot of fans is the Bobby Ryan situation, a healthy scratch against the San Jose Sharks. The Senators go out and produce perhaps their best game of the year. What's your takeaway from this move by DJ Smith?
Well, when he spoke to the media Sunday morning before that game against San Jose, Ken, we lost track of how many times he used the word work, and he continually said he was going to go with his 20 hardest working players. It's clear that Bobby Ryan isn't a guy that's going to drive a play with his speed, especially with the way the game is being played now. So how can he be effective in another way? Maybe a power play specialist, and we all know how much that has struggled. So I think it was time to make a move and perhaps send a little bit of a jolt throughout the locker room that, some guy that has been around as long as he has and is taking up as much salary he has, if he's not producing, then he's not going to get in the lineup. And I think what you saw after the fact, who knows if it had anything to do with the result on Sunday, but clearly the Senators were a motivated bunch, and their effort was unmatched by a San Jose team Sunday night at home.
Well, Kenny and Kyle, I almost look at it like it's a nobody is safe mentality. When you're scratching that kind of player, a guy, as Kyle said, that has been around a long time, I think you're sending a message as a new head coach in this league that you have standards. And if the players aren't going to live up to those standards, then they aren't going to play. And we've seen the struggles of Bobby Ryan, and you can't dictate things by what guys make. You have to do what's right for the team. And I think that Kenny, DJ Smith was trying to send a message to the team that this is the approach he's going to take.
And that's the luxury you have as a new coach, right? You come in, it's your mandate. You can do what you want in the early going. He's done it. We did it earlier with Mikhail Bodker. He did it with Ryan here. It's a lot of money sitting out of the games, but at this point in the organization, if you're trying to establish where you're going, you're giving ice time. I mean, I liked what he said about the fourth line guys that played the other night, Schlappick, Sabourin, and Baudin, saying, look, these guys are desperate. I mean, they go do everything they can to stay in the league. This is their chance. So I think it's easier for a coach early on in his mandate, but also I think what Bruce said about the mandate or about the message to anybody. I mean, anybody can be benched at this point, right?
I think so. I think you guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, for him, from day one when he was hired, he talked about building a culture, building an identity where there's a degree of accountability that we've heard players talk about at length, maybe hasn't been as prevalent in years past. So when you sit a guy out like Bobby Ryan, who, again, as we mentioned, been around a long time, that sends a message that, as Bruce referenced, nobody is safe. He's going to go with the 20 guys that he believes will give his team a best chance to win every single night, regardless of what your salary says.
I mean, there's a question here what you're going to do with Ryan and Bodker. I don't think you can do much, right? I mean, and who wants these guys? A lot of teams have these issues, but I think it's a difficult position for Pierre Dorian to be in. You're going to have some extra baggage here for a while until you can make a move. But I guess in the big picture, it has opened the door. We've seen Logan Brown come in to take advantage of injury situations. He's looked pretty good. And Nick Paul, I mean, there's the story of a guy that patience with this guy, and he finally looks like he may have established himself.
Well, 5 training camps for Nick Paul, and even Nick Paul said to me Sunday night, he said, even I was wondering when Nick Paul was finally going to show up and make the National Hockey League. But he went down, I think, to Belleville with the right attitude. He went down with the attitude that he has to be a more physical player. He asked Troy Mann if he could get on the penalty kill down there to block shots. He talked to Troy Mann about working on taking draws because he wants to be a more valuable, well-rounded player that way. I think what we've seen in a couple of games that Nick Paul has played is that he's using his size a little bit more. He's using his feet a little bit more to skate. I think the waiting game, now that he has to do this consistently. I'm not sure that Nick Paul has a spot sewn up in Ottawa, but he's got the opportunity here.
What's interesting about Nick Paul, and it's with a lot of players, is you can't play the same game necessarily in the AHL that you do in the NHL. Down there, I've seen him play down there. He is a dominant first-line player for parts of last year. He was owning the game, playing with Logan Brown and Drake Batherson. He was doing everything, including scoring. Coming up here, he seems to have realized, hey, look, if the goals come, fine. But the first priority, get the pucks deep, bang bodies, do that, control the game that way.
And it comes with confidence too, right? Confidence to be able to hang on to the puck a little bit longer, confidence to drive wide as opposed to just chip it in or look for a teammate to make a play. I think there's really something interesting about him and the way he's dealt with some mental issues over the past couple of years. I mean, a couple of years ago, guys, he bought a place down in Estero, Florida, where he spends his summers now working out. Last summer, he went and attended what's called the Hockey Summit, where they listened to a number of people come in and speak. And one of the guys that really stuck out to him was a former football player. He couldn't remember his name, but he was talking about breathing exercises and meditation and doing this sort of breathing exercises where at the end of it, you just, whatever emotion you're feeling, you kind of let it out. And he is a guy who is, for years, has heard all the criticisms that have been said about him, being linked, of course, to the Jason Spezza trade back in 2014. He would come to the rink thinking, don't make a mistake, you're going to screw up, you're a bust. All of that. And so now he's really, really had to put in a lot of work to make his mindset shift just a little bit more, where he's more positive, he's thinking more confidently, and I think that goes a long way. I think I just see a guy here, guys, that has, battled some internal demons certainly along the way, and of course, ultimately you have to own your own play, and ultimately your play is going to dictate how much of an opportunity you're going to get here at the NHL level. But I think for him now, the way that he's seizing things here right now at the NHL level, still a small sample size, but I think it does certainly in part tell the story of what's been quite a long journey for him to get back to this stage.
And then there's the Red Lobster factor as well.
Yes, of course.
That's
that
great.
could have been the ultimate.
They'll be doing commercials for them any day now.
Okay, let's move. You talk about guys that have come up from the minors and made an impact. I mean, Logan Brown, not a lot of points, but certainly looks like he is not out of place in the NHL, and with a little bit of luck, he'd have a goal or two at this point, right, Bruce?
Well, exactly. He's created some great opportunities. I think he's done a good job. He's kind of settling into that role. He's getting an opportunity with Colin White, and Artem Anisimov injured right now. I think that we saw that pass he tried the other night. I mean, to me, he's got some confidence. He'll get more confidence if he can get a goal or two, and he needs one, and maybe that will come on the power play where they've had so many people want Logan Brown to be on this team because he's a big body and they want to see him he's got skills, they want to see him have success.
Well, they want to see some hope, right? I mean, this is going to be a losing season. I mean, as much as they won 2 of 3 in the homestand, they're not going to make the playoffs, but it's about seeing some hope down the road. And I think there are signs here that Logan Brown might be getting it and might be a guy that can be an offensive producer. The power play needs some work. Hopefully he can, for their sake, he can get some points on the power play. But that's the hope part of it. And I think maybe what we've seen in the last 2 weeks here is both goalies sort of sharing this thing and trying to, they're the leaders, let's face it. They're veteran goalies who have to support in the bad times. And I think both Anders Nielsen and Craig Anderson have had their moments here.
Yeah, and DJ Smith Sunday night after the win said, as great as Nick Paul was, Brady Tkachuk with 3 points, he said the player he was most happy with was Craig Anderson and the effort that he put in. I mean, he was a goaltender that watched from afar for the last 3. I mean, of course, he gets in the latter half of the game against New York after Nielsen was pulled, but he is the guy that loves to use that line, you earn your ice time around here. And so I can still see it being a bit of a balancing act in terms of a more 50-50 type split between the two goaltenders, but they're two veteran guys that, again, on a rebuilding team, you have to have confidence in your goaltender, whereas the younger guys continue to figure things out. They can at least, in part, mask some of the issues here as they continue to try to figure things out.
Well, and I think after Nielsen made 3 starts in a row, people were ready to hand him the number 1 job and say that, they'll be trading Craig Anderson anytime soon. I think we're going to see this all year, and I think what DJ Smith is going to try to do is to allow a goaltender who is playing well to continue playing hot. Might be a strong word, Kenny, but at this point he'll ride whoever is playing well and see where it goes.
Well, after this week, this is a crazy week. They're off until Saturday against the Bruins, but then the schedule gets really crazy, guys. Like there's lots
14
of
games in November.
And lots of 3 games in 4 nights. You're going to see both goalies playing here, and how you get through that is going to be a test of these young guys learning how to play in these kind of games and getting some help from the veterans. I mean, just before we wrap up here, maybe a quick take on the first month of the year, the first 10-game, 11-game segment. I would say a little bit bumpy, maybe trying to understand how DJ Smith wants wants them to play. At least they're coming into the break with on a bit of a high.
Yeah, and I know coming right out of the gate, the big question was, well, who's going to score for this team? And the offense really struggled in the first 4 or 5 games of the year, but it seems like now they're starting to get a little bit more cohesion. I really like the line right now of Pajot, Brown, and Nick Paul, who we talked about earlier. So now at least there's some strides made 5-on-5, and I think if they can try to bring that power play up just a little bit from what's now sitting below 6%, maybe they give themselves more of a chance moving forward.
Well, yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, if you look at the first month of the season, they seem to be a work in progress right now. They obviously have to improve defensively. It's one thing that they talked about ad nauseum in the offseason. You've seen some improvement over the course of the last month or so, but that's got to continue to improve, and obviously that power play remains an issue, and it has to get going.
Well, I see there's always going to be issues with this team. That wraps up another edition of Post Media's Ottawa Senators panel. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Kyle, for coming in. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.